All right, welcome back. Now we're on to the part of 911, call a cop, get a cop. When 911 was first introduced, policing was very different. Policing started as night watch and then it became day watch. So it was only during certain periods of the day for really, really bad crimes. So we knew that crimes happened at night, so we had a night watch. Nothing really happened during the day. We didn't need them because people really handled their stuff. If something happened, they handled it, unless it was just so bad that they needed the police to step in. And the bad part was also it was very corrupt back then. So a lot of times people didn't want police intervening into their daily lives because it was corrupt. So they dealt with a lot of things on their own. So when 911 first came out, it was great. Before that, we had you dialed 0 and there was the operator. But it was an amazing thing where you could actually dial something, get emergency services and help right away. What it has turned into has been a little bit different, and I call it 911, call a cop, get a cop. I can play you tape after tape of, and you can go to YouTube and listen to them, of people calling 911 to find out what their power bill is, or to get a ambulance for their dog. And hopefully we all know that ambulance are for people, and if you have something wrong with your dog, you have to drive it to a vet or call a mobile vet to come out to you. We don't actually have city, county-wide ambulance that come out free of charge, or they charge you later, or your insurance, or things like that for dogs. Or as I have an example of calling 911 because you went to Burger King and they didn't make your sandwich right, and you went to the manager and didn't get the answer you wanted. It is 911, unfortunately, has turned into cops handle everything for us. And I think we need to remember that that's not the job of the police. The police are out there for crimes, for criminals. And if you have something that happens to you and a crime has occurred, or you need their assistance, that's what they're there for. But you still have to be an adult and handle things on our own. So there is I can't remember what video it is, but you'll see a video. It's great, where you have some people calling 911 and you'll kind of understand. I always get people that want to go into law enforcement and they always talk about going on ride-alongs in a police car. I highly recommend you all start out by calling a 911 communication center, dispatch center, and doing a 2-hour sit-in is what we call it. You really get a good understanding that there aren't an unlimited amount of dispatchers down in dispatch. And so you can imagine if you have, for example, in the Ashland area, the dispatch handles Ashland Police, Talent, Eagle Point, Medford. It's a dispatch center that handles all these different police departments. And so you can have somebody from Ashland calling 911 with a real emergency. Let's say they're getting robbed. You could have someone calling from Medford that's just been involved with a car accident and there's injuries. You could have another person calling from White City that their house just got burglarized. But let's say we have some kids playing on the phone and their parents aren't watching them. This ties up a 911 operator. Let's say we only have 4 operators down there or 5 operators. They're all on 911 calls. And let's say now here you have Central Point, a real person with a real emergency calls in and needs help. They've got somebody breaking into their house. They're calling 911 and it's just ringing. It's ringing because you have people calling 911 either for frivolous things that they should be handling on their own, such as a hamburger at Burger King that was made wrong. And they're tying up these dispatchers when they could not be tying them up. And that's why it's so important. And if you go do a sit down in dispatch, you'll see how that happens. There's not an unlimited amount of dispatchers. And so that 911 number is very special. And I think that we sometimes forget that it's only meant for true emergencies. Don't tie up those dispatchers, don't tie up that line unless it's for a true emergency. And also you have to remember that a lot of times, let's say you have 2 kids playing on the phone, they call 911 and they hang up, that dispatcher is going to call back. That dispatcher doesn't know it's kids playing on the phone, or they don't know if it's somebody that really needs help. So they're going to dispatch 2 officers out to that scene to see what's going on. So if somebody doesn't answer and confirm that there's not an emergency, we now are wasting 2 officers' resources and time that they could be responding to other calls that are true police emergencies. So anyway, I just think a lot of times people forget what 911 is. and how important and serious it is. All right. Oh, here we go. The Burger King call. You're going to get to hear it right now. I'm so glad. All right, here we go.
How can I help you? Yeah, I'm over here. I'm over here at Burger King right here in San Clemente. No, not San Clemente. I'm sorry. I live in San Clemente. I'm in Laguna Niguel, I think. That's where I'm at. I'm at a drive-thru right now. I ordered my food 3 times. They're mopping the floor inside, and I understand they're busy. They're not even busy. Okay, I've been the only car here. I asked for 4 different times to make me a Western barbecue burger. Okay, they keep giving me a hamburger with lettuce, tomato, and cheese, onions. And I said, I'm not leaving. I want a Western burger because I just got my kids from Taekwondo. They're hungry. I'm on my way home, and I live in San Clemente. Okay. She gave me another hamburger. It's wrong. I said 4 times. I said, I want it. She goes, can you go out and park in front? I said, no. I want my hamburger right. So then the lady came to the manager, or whoever she is. She came up and she said, do you want your money back? And I said, no, I want my hamburger. My kids are hungry, and I have to jump on the toll freeway. I said, I am not leaving this spot. And I said, I will call the police because I want my Western burger done right. Now, is that so hard? Okay, what exactly is it you want us to do for you? I sent an officer down here. I want them to make me right. Ma'am, we're not going to go down there and enforce your Western bacon cheeseburger. What am I supposed to do? This is between you and the manager. We're not going to go enforce how to make a hamburger. That's not a criminal issue. There's nothing criminal.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that because we only have so much time. I don't want to waste the time on this, but you can see and you can follow it through. It's under 911 police call, or lady calls 911 over wrong Burger King order. So you can go YouTube that up if you want. And there's, as you see, there's a whole bunch of other ones as well. But and this happens all the time. And I know we laugh about it, but I hope it's an educational tool to understand how important 911 is and not to waste the dispatcher's time there, because you're actually taking a dispatcher away, a trained dispatcher that knows how to handle emergencies or help deliver a baby that could be helping people with real emergencies. All right, police are expected to share, obviously, in a number of certain social service functions, such as domestic violence, mentally ill and emotionally disturbed individuals, child abuse, elder abuse, and we're becoming more involved in security and networks with counterterrorism as well, especially post 9/11. All right, there are tens of thousands of uniformed police in America. In fact, there's millions. There's about 2 million. They're in metropolitan areas, suburban, rural, college campuses, borders, airports, harbors, and miscellaneous areas. Also, American citizens remain opposed to a centralized police force. So if you think of the Royal Canadian Mounted Unit, they police all of Canada. And where you look at America, it's really different. If you're in Ashland, you have the Ashland City Police. I have a mail. If you mail any mail to me at my place where I live right now, my house, it goes to Ashland. But if I call the police, I'm actually outside the city, so Jackson County Police are going to respond. It's all about jurisdiction, and there's a lot. And depending on the chief or sheriff of the department, that department can be run very differently. So currently, Americans are opposed. A lot of the studies that have been done and the surveys, they're opposed to having something like the FBI, instead of it being federal, being the main police department. They're opposed to that. They like having Ashland Police Department's very high on community policing. They like having a police department that's very in tune to the needs of that particular city or county or jurisdiction. All right, we just kind of went over the pros and cons. All right, so there's tens of thousands of law enforcement officers out there. They are in all different areas, in all different arenas. So, and why that's important to understand is, number one, you need to understand how it works, but also for those of you that want to go into a future career of law enforcement. I mean, you can work as undercover officers. There's uniform, there's private security. There's a lot of officers that work in non-sworn capacity. Non-sworn means they don't go to an academy and get certified by the state to have arresting powers. They go on their own, and they may do some own training of different types, but they are not sworn officers. They do not have arresting powers of the state. All right, levels of policing. So we have all different types of policing. Here, think about unmanned aerial vehicles, GPS systems, video surveillance, And we also have extended government authority to tap phones. And where did that come from? That came from the USA Patriot Act. And did you know that's an acronym? An acronym meaning every word in USA Patriot Act, every letter stands for something. We have so many acronyms these days. I have to tell people, stop using acronyms, or use it, but tell me what it means, because we just assume everybody knows, but there's so many that who can know what. So anyway, the USA Patriot Act actually stands for USA is uniting, strengthening America by P, providing A, appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism, Act of 2001. So to let you know what it is, and you do need to know this, the USA Patriot Act is an act of Congress that was signed into law by President George Bush on October 26, 2001. Its title is a 10-letter backronym, USA Patriot, that stands for da 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 da. And what it was it happened after 9/11, after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. And how I remember the USA Patriot Act is two ways. Number one is it forced all those different policing agencies, I just went over a ton of them, to communicate to each other. After 9/11, we started getting so many teletypes and bolos, which are be on the lookout for, that it was amazing. It was amazing how much wasn't being communicated. And so number one, the USA Patriot Act forced all those different agencies out there to communicate. Because when we start communicating, it's amazing how we can find out things. And I can tell you that this goes way back. There's a sad case of Polly Klaas. She was a young girl that was kidnapped and she was raped and killed. And had police departments communicated to each other, her life could have possibly been saved. And the same thing with 9/11. We think a lot of information was out there before the attacks. Had we just communicated, we possibly could have stopped them. So we don't want to let that happen again. So number one, it's communication. And number two, it allowed the government to kind of relax the Fourth Amendment. We're going to be talking about the Fourth Amendment coming up, but it relaxes that Fourth Amendment where the government can go to secret hearings and get warrants if they suspect that you're engaging in some type of terrorism. Okay, we're going to stop here. I'll see you for the next video so that hopefully we can finish this first chapter.